Hey everyone, it's Spencer here and welcome back to the Niche Pursuits podcast. What you're about to hear is an interview that I just completed with Dave Chesson. Dave is the founder of KindlePreneur.com and the software tool called Publisher Rocket at publisherrocket.com. And Publisher Rocket is a software tool that helps you do keyword research, category research, topic research for Kindle books. And so it really helps you publish and optimize your books that are on Amazon Kindle platform. Now, Dave and I have known each other for a long time. We go back a few years, and if you recall, he actually is a previous guest on the podcast. And so we talked a lot about his background of how he started Kindlepreneur and Publisher Rocket and got that going. And so today we don't focus on that quite as much, although we do dive into that. I wanted to hear more about any other tips or strategies that he had for growing his business. And so we talk a little bit about publishing Kindle books, but then we dive more into some unique strategies for getting links to your site, such as building small little tools. For example, on Kindlepreneur, they built a book description generator and other tools that allowed them to really get out in the marketplace and have people recognize them for something unique. In addition, we talk about one of his other authority sites that he's been able to partner on called Gunning University. And as you'll hear in the interview, it's doing quite well. Overall, it's just great to talk to somebody that is doing so well in business across so many different areas, and Dave is one of those guys. Now, if you are interested in getting Publisher Rocket to start your Kindle publishing business, you can go to nichepursuits.com/Publisher Rocket, and what that link will actually allow you to do is get access to a course that Dave's created that you can't get anywhere else for free. So when you buy the software tool, you get the training course for free as well that really is going to walk you through how to get your Kindle business off the ground. And again, you can go to nichepursuits.com/Publisher Rocket. So I hope you enjoyed the interview. Hey, Dave, welcome to the Niche Pursuits podcast.
Hey, Spencer, thanks for having me. It's really good to be back.
Yep, it is good to have you back. I checked the date. It's been about 3 years, almost 3.5 years, believe it or not, since you were on the podcast. It was 2017.
Man, so much can change so quickly.
A lot has changed, and we're going to dive into that for sure. So I love what you're always doing because you're similar to me in that one project is never quite enough. So you're working on lots of projects, lots of exciting things. You're developing software, you're building sites, you're doing Kindle books, you're doing a lot of things. And so for people that want to know more of your backstory, I believe that we covered that in the previous podcast. But I do want to touch on Publisher Rocket. That's kind of what we talked about a lot in the last podcast. And I still know that that's really important for your business. So catch people up with what Publisher Rocket is and how it's going there.
Yeah, sure. Well, when I first started getting into self-publishing books, I had a lot of problems in trying to figure out what was going on inside of Amazon's market. I mean, in SEO, right? Before you start building a website or before you start writing an article, we do our SEO research. We think about, we learn about what people are searching for, how to best kind of tweak our article to really fit an existing market. Well, back in the day, I really wanted to apply this to Amazon. I mean, after all, you have people going to Amazon, they're typing stuff into the search box. They're trying to they're trying to find the right product, in this case, the right book to meet their needs. And there really wasn't much in the market doing that. And so I started to analyze kind of Amazon like I did as a Google SEOer and developed a software that's, in a way, it's kind of like the long tail pro of Amazon.
Right.
In this case, you can go there, you can do a keyword, you can use our keyword feature, and it will tell you what words or phrases people are typing into Amazon. It will give you the estimated Amazon searches per month. So now you actually know which keywords really drive traffic. It'll also tell you the average amount of money that books are making that show up for that keyword. which is pivotal because you don't want to invest all that money making a book that's only going to drive maybe $10 a month.
Right.
And of course, like I said, I kind of pulled that competition score from you back in the day. I wanted a score from 1 to 100 to let people know how hard it would be in order to rank in the top 3 for that keyword on Amazon. So we generated a system that did exactly that. And that's basically our keyword feature in a nutshell. We also have the competition feature where you can now quickly look at all the books that rank for that keyword and get real deep insight into what they're doing, what's working for them, how much money they're making. A lot of authors like to use that feature to kind of spy on other authors to see how much money they actually are getting, which has been fun.
Right.
And finally, we have a category feature, which for most authors, I think is probably one of their favorites. If you choose the right categories on Amazon, you'll have an extremely easy or easier time becoming a #1 bestseller than if you choose the wrong ones. And that's because bestseller lists are based off of how many books sold for that category. So in this one particular time period, category A may only require you to sell 2 books a day in order to be the #1 bestseller. But category B may require you to sell over 100 books a day in order to be a bestseller. So what we did was we took all 11,000 plus categories that Amazon offers, listed them, which you can't find anywhere else, and then actually tell authors how many books that day they need to sell in order to be the #1 bestseller. So that way they see the information, can choose the right one, and get that bestseller tag, which for many is really important because once you become an Amazon bestseller, you can put that on your resume. You can put that on your outreach. It's also great for speaking engagements, maybe a higher chance to get on this podcast.
That's right.
Basically, we're just trying to demystify Amazon, pull back that curtain, and help authors figure out what's going on in the market so they can make better decisions on their books.
Yeah, it's a super smart software tool that is certainly helpful for people that are trying to write Amazon books or to publish books on Amazon. And I know that you've published a number of books over the years. Are you still publishing any new books or are you just kind of optimizing your existing ones right now?
Yeah, actually, I just published a new book back in February.
Okay.
But in truth, I have 9 books, and each one of those have steadily generated between $7,000 to $9,000 a month every month, which has just been incredible because
Wow.
I haven't really had to do too much. And then again, that just comes down to understanding the market. I wrote books for where there was an existing market on Amazon, and there were no other books serving their needs. And so, you don't have to be the greatest writer in the world so long as you're the only one that's actually answering people's questions or, meeting people's pain points, then, you get to win. A great example of this is back in the day, Evernote was like a really hot topic on Amazon. Anybody writing a book on Evernote could just, they could just write a book and they'd make some pretty good money. But the problem though is the competition caught up, right? After everybody knew about the whole Evernote craze, there were new books entering the market every day. So at this point, you could either write an Evernote book yourself, right? But then you're going to have to become this master marketer. You're going to have to write the best book on the subject matter, and then maybe you'll get up to the top and enjoy that money. However, though, I started using Publisher Rocket at this point when it was in its infancy, and discovered that there were actually people who were typing in phrases like Evernote for students, Evernote for teachers, Evernote for lawyers, Evernote for project managers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, would you make more money going for those than if you were to rank #1 for just Evernote? No. But for the mass majority of writers, you could write the best book on Evernote and still drown and never be found on the market. But you can turn around and make the only book serving this existing market and enjoy a continuous stream of income every month because you're the only book that's actually addressing their personal needs or that demographic.
Yeah, I love it. It's like the niche website approach, right? I mean, you're targeting a very specific niche. It's just for books. And that's a way that you can stand out and make some money, as you've proven there. And so the business itself, though, for Publisher Rocket, I know it's done pretty well. Last time we talked, I believe it was still just a one-time purchase price. Is it still that way, or have you moved to a subscription model?
So it's still currently $97, and it's a one-time fee. But one of the things that we've been doing recently is we've actually invested in a whole bunch of servers. We've developed crawlers, And we are now crawling through Amazon's system and we're recording historical data.
Okay.
So very soon, authors will be able to look at trends in the market as well as trends in the keywords. So they'll see when the peak time is for their genre to launch their book. We'll also have some trend alerts and things like that coming. But the problem with doing that is our operational costs are increasing. So very soon, we're going to be shifting the model to a paid subscription. But anybody who owns Rocket before that time period will never have to pay for it again. They get it for free for life. So just make sure if you're thinking about it, you definitely want to get it before we switch to the subscription model. Otherwise, you'll be paying that annually instead of just a one-time.
Yeah. No, I think it's a smart business decision on your part, and it makes a lot of sense. You've got a lot of additional server costs and crawling costs and ongoing maintenance costs to move to that. So that makes sense. So for people that maybe aren't authors right now and are thinking about writing their first book, is there still a lot of opportunity out there? I mean, I dabbled in the Kindle publishing world a few years ago. Gosh, I don't know. It's been probably 5 years actually. I published some books and I didn't put a lot of effort behind it, but I made some decent money. With so many people writing books now, is there still really opportunity sort of for the new person to make their mark?
Yeah, there are. There's definitely a lot of underserved markets out there. There are definitely some overserved markets, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But one thing I would say though is that especially to a lot of niche website authors, is that you already have an existing crowd and you already have developed some niche websites out there that focus on serving an existing crowd. Combining those two with that and a book may be a phenomenal way to add more value to your website. So maybe you're only making like a couple $100 in AdSense, or maybe Amazon Associate, them and their cutting of the fees. But the fact of the matter is that you can write a book. You can take all the information from your website, compile it into a book, and then use your website to actually advertise your book on Amazon, and then send people to buy it. And that's a new income stream right there. This, I think, gives a lot of niche website owners a competitive advantage, because if you're constantly sending traffic from your niche website to your book on Amazon, Amazon's seeing the continued popularity of your book as well as the conversions. And basically, the way that Amazon's A9 algorithm works is that it says, wow, this book continues to make sales, whereas these others don't. And so you're actually going to sit up higher in the rankings. So I think it's a really good, powerful 1-2 punch is if you combine your niche website with the launch of your book.
Yeah. No, I like that strategy a lot. Makes sense. So we talked about before the call, if people are interested in checking out Publisher Rocket, you were going to make available a little bit of training to help them out, learn the ropes a little bit. Why don't you tell them kind of what you're putting together and what that can do for them?
Yeah. So I've actually just created a brand new course that's going out into the market called Mastering Amazon Keywords. This is going to give everybody the understanding of exactly how to do the research so that you understand the right keywords to go after, and then what to do with them. There's actually a lot more steps than filling in your 7 Kindle keyword blocks. And so we're going to help you with that. And then finally, also how to discover the right categories, add more categories to a book, and even change them. And so this will be a $50 value, but we're going to give it absolutely free to those who are purchasing through Niche Pursuits.
Yep. No, that's awesome. So anytime you can get Dave to give you some tips or advice through some training, like I would take advantage of that for sure. So yeah. So if people want to check that out, they can go to nichepursuits.com/publisher rocket. We'll make sure that directs to the right landing page so they can get that course and get Publisher Rocket at the same time. So I want to kind of shift slightly in a different direction because you've done a ton of really interesting things with your business. You're not just publishing Kindle books. You're not just the creator of Publisher Rocket, but you've gone in a lot of different directions. And one thing, and we talked about this in our last podcast as I reviewed, is you are using SEO and content marketing a lot to grow your business. And so maybe you can talk to that a little bit. What are some of the latest strategies that you've used in terms of content marketing that have worked well to grow either Kindle a Publisher Rocket or any of your other assets that you have there?
Yeah, well, when you're trying to build an authority website, one of the strategies that's really helped me to not only stand apart from my competitors, but also give me a whole bunch of backlinks is creating free tools. When I created Kindlepreneur back in the day, one of the best things I did was I hired a JavaScript programmer on Upwork to build a simple calculator. And this calculator I call the Kindle Calculator. And if you just Google it, you can probably find it. But what you do is that you can take the Amazon bestseller rank, right, which is a number from 1 to now it's like 7 million. So the total number of books that are out there. Mm-hmm. And that is, if you're number 1 on Amazon bestseller rank, that means you're the number 1 best-selling book in all of Amazon. If you're number 7 million, then they're worst-selling book. Well, I figured out what that number actually means. And so based off of the number you have, it can tell you how many books that day you sold on Amazon. So I just had somebody create this simple calculator where somebody could put the Amazon bestseller rank of a book into it, click it, and it will tell you how many books that day they sold. Pretty simple.
Right.
But man, did it take off. Like, it was the first time. And so people weren't just finding it and using it once. They were coming back to it over and over and over again. Now, it's not, that's not like awesome in its own, except that people in forums and on Facebook groups were talking about it. And because people were coming back, the branding of the website just really took off. And so that was a really great start for the website. And on top of that, too, nobody could really write an article about self-publishing or how to self-publish or how to market a book without talking about this calculator and linking to it. So it really gave me a jump start. The next tool that I did was I found that there's a problem for a lot of self-publishers out there where when they go to write their book description, Amazon allows you to put HTML into it. But a mass majority of authors don't know HTML, okay? They don't use WordPress, so they can't, do the little hack there, and they get confused by it. Right. So we just created this simple WYSIWYG where you write in your book description, and then you highlight things and you click B for bold, or, we didn't call it H1 through H6. We say this size, and this size, and made the buttons look the size.
Okay.
But ultimately, you can make it look exactly the way it would on Amazon, and then click Get My Code, take it, and use it. Well, just those 2 tools alone just became this huge thing for most authors. And to this day, it's funny, I'll go to a conference and somebody's like, they'll hear Kindlepreneur. I was like, do you have a book description generator? I'm like, yep. They're like, oh, I use that all the time. It's like, cool. And so I think that's a really unique thing. And when it comes to others in my industry, not many people have tools. So you really stick out as being something more than just a writing website. One of the newest websites that I've been working on is Gun University. And I teamed up with this superb marksman. His name is Ryan Kleckner. He's kind of famous in the gun world for long range shooting. He's been on Top Shot. He's a ex-sniper. He used to work for Barrett. He's actually a firearms attorney. I mean, a phenomenal partner. And so him and I have kind of been pairing and creating this. And the first thing I said to him was like, all right, we're creating a tool. Because we don't want to be like every other blog, where somebody is like, oh, great, another gun review / gun website. Yeehaw. So we're actually creating this tool called a scope ring finder. And I'm really excited about this. I think it's going to be a real game changer because I think one of the biggest problems that hunters, AR-15 owners kind of run into is how do they make their scope fit their gun? Now, a crazy part about this problem is that scopes have different lens shapes, right? You have your ocular lens, and then you have the other lens. I think it's called an occidental lens, but you have the 2 lenses. And your rifle sometimes is flat, sometimes curves down, giving you more space. Sometimes it has a different connection, like a Picatinny or a dovetail or whatever. The key is you need to find the right scope ring to wrap around your scope perfectly, right around the diameter, and then just high enough so that the scope clears and isn't touching, like leaning on your rifle.
Right.
And then it also has to be the right fitting. So we're creating a tool that's going to be, actually, it'll be launched by the time this comes out.
All right.
And what it does is that you go to it, you select your scope, you select your rifle, and then it immediately produces this giant list of every scope ring that will work and is the optimal size for your pairing. And you can use filters, find the right color. But what's awesome is when you go to look at the pricing, we scoured the internet and found the cheapest price. And when you click on that, that's an affiliate link.
Yep.
Well, scope rings are about $100. So it's really going to solve a major problem in the gun industry. Anybody who hunts, anybody who's an AR-15 has run into this before. And it's not only going to be what I think is a very large revenue generator, but it's going to be something that everybody's going to want to come back to or even talk about. Oh man, don't guess on the scope ring. Go to such and such and check them out, or just Google scope ring finder.
Right.
And again, it's at this point, anybody who ever writes about scopes or how to connect a scope is going to want to link to this page, which really helps to put you on a map.
Yeah. So a couple follow-up questions for the tools that you've created, and it could be for either Kindlepreneur or Gun University. Do you remember how much you've spent to build those tools?
Yeah. Back in the day, the Kindle Calculator cost about $500 to make, which it was a bit risky. And I'll tell you this, I can definitely go over some do's and don'ts when hiring a programmer, as I'm sure you could too. But I was lucky enough to get a guy who was able to make it happen. Okay. And $500 seemed to be pretty good looking back at it. Whereas what I got out of it was worth way more than $500.
Right.
The book description generator, I kind of fell into knowing more about programming after having done the first one. And I think I got that one for about $700 the first time. And then we redid it later to include more markets. And I think it was about $1,200 to $1,300 to do. But again, I mean, the amount of backlinks that we got from it.
That's what I was going to say is way more valuable than what you invested. Way more value.
Yeah, exactly. And, what was really awesome was when I first came out with the tool, I had a legitimate reason for reaching out to people who had previously published an article and said, hey, instead of telling them this long-winded thing, here's a calculator that you can just point to and it will do it. And I actually had a lot of success of people being, oh, wow, that's really cool. And then, not only adding it to the old post, but then writing about it later. So anyways, that was that one. With regards to the scope ring finder, that one's a lot. It's a larger project. We'll put it that way, because
definitely
it wasn't just the designing of the scope ring finder. It was also I have a team of people that helped to generate the database, because we had to put in every rifle in America and every scope, and then every scope ring. The scope ring was actually kind of easy. We got the markets to give us the data. Most of the scopes are pretty easy too. The scope companies are really big fans of Ryan because he's a long range shooter. It's all the different rifles, and also knowing, like, it really took Ryan Kleckner to look at the rifle and know exactly what that is. Like, oh, that's a dovetail. This is what it's going to be, and like, I never would have figured this out. So it was really good to have him. So that was a bit of a complicated project, but I think we were able to do the programming alone for $6,000 or $7,000.
Okay. All right.
But considering that it's going to be generating affiliate directly for $100 products, that people are buying online all the time anyways, I think it's well worth it.
Now, I don't want to spend too much time on Gun University, but are you willing to share like how successful the site is now, either in terms of revenue or traffic, right? Or whatever you're willing to share there, because even though it's like just one of your projects, like, I know that it's doing really well.
Yeah, well, we really didn't start working on it until about, I'd say, January of this year, really. It's kind of been one of those projects that was kind of in the back of our minds that we were kind of doing, but we really ramped it up at the beginning of this year. So it's a bit hard to say, because also too, many people probably aren't surprised to hear that gun sales are at a record level at this point, just because of all the things that are going on, as well as more people are just thinking, maybe I should get something. So maybe our numbers are a bit inflated, but right now we're doing about 250,000 visitors per month, and We're doing just over $40,000 a month. So
that's huge. That's awesome, man.
It's a lot of fun. I'm really learning a lot because I'm not a gun expert, even though I've got a bit of a background in it.
Yeah.
But it's really a unique industry to be in, and it's kind of fun too.
Yeah. I want to stay on the tools just a little bit, because I think that is something for listeners that are getting started out, building their own niche website, that they might be able to build a tool, right? If they're able to spend $500 and build something that's really unique and it generates tons of backlinks and gets some sort of PR, like that's a really smart move for their site. So how do you brainstorm ideas? How are you thinking of like, what's a tool that I could create? Is there any process that you have, or do you just kind of wake up in the middle of the night and go, oh, I got an idea?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. The first thing is that if you're in the industry yourself, you're going to know what pain points you run into. Okay. I remember having to use an Excel sheet myself that I created to help figure out what the ABSR to book sales was. That's, let's face it, I was a bit selfish when I was like, wouldn't it be nice if I just had a calculator? I mean, just, so that was something that was definitely a thing. And then on top of that too, for Kindlepreneur, I started getting a lot of emails from people saying that they're running into this problem. That was another trigger. So first off, if you're using it yourself or you're in the industry, think about the things that are causing you to have to do extra work, because it also means everybody else is. The second thing is listen to your people. Once you do have followers, once you do have people and traffic coming to your website, believe me, I mean, you probably hear about problems all the time.
Sure.
Pain points, situations people run into, and ask yourself if there's some way to fix that with the tool. A third thing is look at the industry as well. Maybe somebody has a tool out there, and yeah, okay, that sounds like copying, but here's the kicker: find out how to do it better.
Right.
What is it that somebody's not doing? Back in the day, we just did Amazon's book description generator. But later on, I was like, let's have Barnes & Noble, iTunes, the editorial review section, Kobo, because they all have different rules and they all have different things you're allowed to HTML. And so we kind of stayed ahead of it. But somebody could have been like, hey, they're only focused on Amazon. Let's do all of them.
Right.
So if somebody has something, think about how you can actually make it better. And I think that's a really important area as well.
Are you collecting any emails on any of these calculators, or is it just free, no opt-in?
No opt-in. In my industry for Kindlepreneur, I think that authors are a bit more skeptical about requiring to leave an email. So what I do is that I do an exit intent. So once they show up, once they go to exit, it asks, because hey, you just used my tool, you got benefit, you got value. Now here's an opportunity to sign in. And that exit intent did so well that Opt-in Monster, who I was using, actually asked to do a case study on it. So
oh, really?
I think yeah. They're looking at the numbers and they're like, hey, you're doing pretty good here. Can we write about it? So I was pretty jazzed about that. The other thing though, is that for the book description generator, we thought about what the real pain point is for people creating their book description. And that's coming up with a good description, because most of these descriptions really suck. I mean, it's like, don't write a book report. No, stop that. You're giving way too many details, too many people. So what I did was I created a blueprint for nonfiction and fiction book descriptions. And we actually added a button right on the tool where it's like, hey, download my free blueprint to creating a best-selling book description. And we've had a lot of people click on that because they're sitting down, they're trying to write their book description right then and there. That is an amazing tool that adds even more value, as well as trains them how to use the book description generator even better. So I think that's a real big win-win. Sure, we could get more email subscribers if we made them subscribe to get their code, for their book description. But I think for the long term, I think we're doing better by our people. People are happier, and we just found more ways to kind of provide.
Do you remember what your exit intent opt-in rate is?
No, I haven't actually looked at that in a while.
Yeah.
We're actually doing a complete website redesign as we speak on Kindlepreneur. So I'm trying to jump into the numbers, but not off the top of my head.
Okay. Just, I mean, if Opt-in Monster's reaching out, it must have been pretty good.
Yeah. They got the numbers from back then though. For the article.
That's awesome. Very cool. So let's talk a little bit more about I guess I am going to jump into Gun University a little bit, just because I know when listeners hear the number, hey, we did $40,000 a month and we really only kind of got started in January.
Yeah.
Maybe explain like how you were able to do that. Like what sort of resources are you putting behind this? And yeah, just what's worked really, really well to grow it so fast?
Well, growing it so fast is definitely a product of having Ryan Kleckner as one of your partners. And I would, for me, I'm more of the SEO and the content manager, and he's more of the, like, he truly understands the industry. He has his own podcast. He's well known in the industry. He's not going to let us write anything that he can't stand next to, right? Mm-hmm. But on top of that, though, he has access to so many companies in the industry. He can get on the phone and call anybody, and talk to them. He's on Fox a lot. Pro or con politics, we're not going to go there, but he is one of the people that Tucker Carlson interviews a lot. Anytime there is a shooting or anytime there is a Second Amendment issue or so, because Ryan is an expert in long-range shooting as well as a lawyer, they want his opinion on how to interpret things. And so that's generated a lot of, shall we say, backlinks to an extent. Mm-hmm. We have friends in the industry. So that definitely got us on the map from a backlinking, but combining his skill and mine, I think really sped up the process a lot. And so that's one thing that people can definitely consider is partnerships, kind of like what the Authority Hacker guys did. They have a strong 1-2 punch using, two very different skill sets to build their platform, faster than one single person probably could.
Right. So how did you connect with Ryan to form this partnership?
This is actually a great story. Somebody guest posted on Kindlepreneur to write an article on how to write your author bio. And this person chose Ryan's book called Long Range Shooting. It's been like a #1 bestseller on Amazon for like 5 straight years. And that's literally the title, Long Range Shooting. And to talk about how he used his credentials in a very well-developed manner for his author bio. Right? Because some people talk about credentials that have nothing to do with the book. And so she was using his as, this is the time to talk about these. Well, he must have had like mention.com set up for anytime his name pops up or, Google alerts or whatever, got notification that Kindlepreneur had talked about him, read the article and looked up, the bio on me and was like, oh, wow, he lives in Franklin, Tennessee. I live in Franklin, Tennessee. So he reached out and he's like, hey, guy, are you interested in meeting up for lunch? And normally I'm like, no, but I was like, shooting. Okay, sure. Why not?
Yeah.
I'm in Tennessee. We met up for lunch. We started talking and he was working on a project called Rocket FFL, which is a website that helps certify people to buy and sell weapons. And I started giving him advice on what to do. And we ended up partnering on that. It worked out really well. But the whole time I kept telling him, I'm like, Ryan, dude, you got a website called, Kleckner.co, which is building rifles. You've got your, it's like Pew Pew Esquire, which is his lawyer website, Then he's got Rocket FFL. Then he's got another one. I'm like, you need to create what I call the X.com, right? The one website that really is all your focus, because you're doing all of this SEO and backlinks for all these individuals. But the truth of the matter is, why not create the great umbrella of it all and then bring everything under it? And that was my first set of advice. He's like, no. And then later on, he's like, oh, yeah, what about that X.com? I was like, Gun University is. So we partnered up on that and created it.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. To be able to have a partner like that's huge. That's going to get you way ahead of the game. How much content have you guys put up there? I mean, is it like mass amount of content, or is it really just that everything you're putting up has so much authority now?
Yeah, we've been kind of both. I think we're over 200 articles so far, but we've been very particular about making sure that when we create an article that we're giving it enough time for marketing. Sometimes it's just, industry knowledge. Just today, Ryan, it was like, I just posted an article. I'm like, okay, cool. And he's like, yeah, Remington went out of business and they just got bought up. Like Remington owns like 20 or 30 different companies under it. So he's like, all right, I just created the almighty list of every company that bought what part of Remington. And he's like, which is great because, when news agencies are writing articles about Remington going out of business and being bought up by all these companies, they're linking to that article because it's the only one that lists all the companies. So it's a resource. And so he just cranked it out and popped it. And, it's been pretty hot today. Maybe next week it won't, but that's a lot of backlinks that will just come flowing in. So we'll do something like that. We'll do our SEO research and be very particular about what we write, and then we'll do the marketing around it. We do have a couple of writers on our team, which is fun. The thing about the gun industry, and this is probably a major recommendation I would give to people looking to take that next big step, is that when we enter the gun industry, there are a lot of gun writers, okay? They write for a whole bunch of websites. But here's the thing. You read one gun review, and the guy will be like, well, I was on the porch and I got this new, Remington 700 and I figured, might as well write a review. And then he'll talk and, a good old boy,
right.
kind of review. Then you've got the, we'll call it the SEOer who's like, in this Remington 700 review, I'm going to give a full review of the Remington 700 and all of its, intricacies and blah, 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 and here's the specifications and so forth. And the key is that it's all over the good place, right? So what we designed in our articles is we have what I call a cookie cutter layout, okay? Where when you look at one of the gun reviews, it's like I'm training our readers to know exactly what's going to come next, okay? And it's designed this way because Ryan says that this is how gun people would really like to see the information displayed, but then I'm putting it in there from an SEO on-page content. And then finally, we did a design element that makes it really stick out. But what's amazing for our writers now is that instead of telling a writer just to write a review about this gun, we actually send them a form. And in the form, they just fill out the form, which is each one of the sections in our cookie cutter design. And so we did this for our gun reviews. We did this for gun versus gun review, so a comparison. Mm-hmm. And we did this for our best of articles, like best 9mm pistols. Mm-hmm. And this way, again, it's easy to work with these gun experts because we now know that we're going to get the right content and the right layout and that it has the best on-page SEO. And we're not leaving it up to these experts to talk about, the
right.
this and that and be all over the place. And I think the readers have really enjoyed that because they know what to expect. I think it's affected our SERPs because if you're looking at gun reviews in the search results of Google, you're going to be like, oh, I know what to expect on this one because it's familiar. And you're going to click on it. So I think that's been a really good 1-2 punch for us and has allowed us to expand our content without it just having to be Ryan or I writing.
Right. So being able to provide a standard format that your authors can write to so that they're covering the topics you want them to cover, but it flows well, from a reader's perspective, right?
Exactly. And on top of that, we don't have to train all these guys on-page SEO, which would have been near impossible. Or we get SEOers to write about guns, and then the gun people will be like, this is not legit, which they really will call it out.
So how does somebody that doesn't have that partnership, they don't have that Ryan in their industry to partner with them, right? They're, for lack of a better term, they've picked a niche that maybe they're interested in, but maybe they're not the pinnacle of expert, right? And they're trying to build a website. They want to rank in Google. They want to do well. How do they do that without being an expert in the industry, right? Any tips?
Yeah, well, first off there is something to behold in somebody who is starting off and is very open about, I'm new to this, and so I'm learning. Hey, I bought a gun, I wanted to learn how to clean. Here are all the mistakes I made. This is, these are all the things I did. This is the gun I bought that I wish I never bought. These are great terms. Just do not try to be something that you're not. People want to learn with you. They want to learn from your mistakes. And so I think that's absolutely doable. Where you would get destroyed in like the gun industry is if you try to pretend that you're an expert. Yeah, it's a brutal market to be in. I would say that really, Gun University is the first one that I've come in as trying to as being a part of like an expert or authority website. When I started Kindlepreneur, it was started as I'm still learning as I go. Learn with me. And then having been in the industry for 6-7 years or so, having done experiments, having worked with Orson Scott Card and Brandon Sanderson, you start to change it to, hey guys, here's the definitive way to do this. So don't think you have to be that. Start here, know who you are, and write like that. And I think people will have more faith and trust in you, and you can grow from there.
So if somebody's getting started out, right, they maybe have a full-time job and they're kind of looking at, writing a Kindle book might be a good little side hustle I could start. Or, Spencer talks about niche websites a lot. That looks like an interesting side hustle to start. Which one do you think you would recommend as somebody that, hey, they're trying to make their first $1,000 or a couple $1,000s a month on the side?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, in truth, I think they're both really good options. I think it really depends on what you're more interested in. When I first started, did niche websites. That's how I grew. And then it was monetizing my niche websites where I added books to it. And then that's when I took that really big step. I was only making a couple hundred from each one of my websites, which was good money. I was jazzed with that.
Yeah.
But the question that I had was, I either need to find more ways to make money from the websites I have, or I need to find ways to make more websites faster. And so I chose to look at monetization as a better option than having to build 10, 20 or so niche websites at the time. But one thing that I think is extremely important for anybody who's getting into this, and I think it's really the secret to my success, was that when I first started, I didn't try to build websites or write my books randomly when I, quote unquote, had time. Instead, what I did was I got up at 4 a.m. every morning. I know that might be rough for some people, but I had my coffee and I worked Monday through Sunday from 4:30. And I got up at 4, but by the time I got to my computer, let's be real, it was 4:30. I worked on my niche websites and on my books from 4:30 till 7. And then 7, I'd get ready, I'd go to work, do my 9 to 5, and I would come back. I would spend time with the family, so I never missed out on anything. And then after the kids go to bed, it was my wife's decision of whether or not I went back to work or if she wanted me to, stay and watch a movie or do something like that. But just by doing that ensured that I was getting about, I was at 21 hours a week for sure on the development of these sites and these books. And when you do that, that habit, I think, grows and it stacks on top of each other. And I think it's a real big separator between those who dabble in things and don't see the success or the results that they want and those who finally do.
I 100% agree. I think there's either route is a good route. You just got to put in the time. You got to put in the effort and the energy. Now, I know that you have a few other things going on. We're not going to have time to dive into all of that, right? But maybe just give us a sense of what you're involved with. You've got a team that has built Publisher Rocket, and now I know you're expanding sort of the development team. Maybe just explain that a little bit, and then I have a follow-up question based on that.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, what I did was because Publisher Rocket grew so fast, I realized that I needed more than just one programmer. You get to that point where you need programmers, plural. You need back end, you need front end. So I actually invested in a programming company called Paladin. I moved Publisher Rocket into it, and this has helped me to learn a lot more about programming. That's why we're able to do the servers and the crawlers and the back end systems and things like that. I've also because I now have a lot of experience in software, I've been reading books, I've been learning the hard way by making mistakes with Publisher Rocket. I've invested in a couple of startups, and I'm also about to launch a new book writing software that I'm really jazzed about, that we just decided on the name, called Atticus, that I hope will be coming out in February. So really, really excited about that. But those are a couple of things. One thing that I would say, though, that's really important, I don't think we covered, is if anybody is ever looking to build a tool, okay, there's a couple of do's and don'ts, okay?
Right.
And if you decide to do that, I think it's wonderful. Just know that it's a bit risky, because you're never really going to know if that programmer is legit or not. when you post something on Upwork, okay, anybody could say they could do it. The problem is, and maybe they can, but maybe they do it in a really bad way to the point that your tool's always breaking, or it's always having problems, or it's never stable, okay? It can be risky. So a couple of recommendations that I give to people that are interested in building a tool, all right, is number one is have a price set in your mind, okay, of how much is it legitimately worth to you. All right. Don't go in there and saying, oh, I'm going to look at all the offers and figure out what the price is. Like, actually tell yourself in your mind, how much is this actually worth to me? Okay. Number two, the cheapest is probably the worst idea. Okay. When somebody comes in with that offer, they're like $250. You're probably, paying for what you're going to get. Okay.
Yep.
I'm not a fan of that. Maybe that person is awesome, but they're putting that low price because they just want to get the job.
Yep.
Okay. The third thing I'd recommend, and this is one of the things I did that I love, is I actually, I did this with Rocket when I developed it, but I gave them a 10% revenue share into the program. Okay. And the reason why this really worked out for me was that if they created, and in order to get the 10% revenue, they have to fix it over and over again. Like, I'm not paying them again to fix it. All right. The key is that because they didn't want to have to fix it, they did it right the first time. Way back in the day, the Flash was the easiest way to have it on both Mac and PC. Okay. But as we all know now, that would have been a horrible mistake. If I hadn't have offered those programmers the 10% revenue share, they would have just easily created in Flash, no problem. Awesome. But instead, they were like, we're going to do this on Node.js and we're going to use Electron because I don't want to have to keep working on it. We're going to do this right. It's going to be harder, but we're going to do it right. So do consider that if you really are creating a software that is going to be a money generator and you really want it to be stable, then make the programmers have skin in the game. They're not going to want to waste their time to create something that they can't create or that they're going to have to keep fixing every time. So that's another recommendation I give. Another thing is that, and this is my final one, is ask them about their process for developing the software. Okay. If the person is like, if I'm a programmer, let's pretend that I'm the programmer. Okay. And I have a job opportunity. You have this project. If I look at that project and I just come up with a number off the top of my head, and I haven't really thought through it, right?
Right.
I haven't figured out why it's going to cost that much. Okay. I just came up with a number just to see if you'd be interested. That's a bad situation because that programmer could get in the middle of the work and find out, oh crap, I don't know how to do this. Or I thought there might be something on GitHub, that I could pull to do this, but it's not working anymore. Instead, I want somebody who comes back with a project scope that lays out, these are the things that we're going to do. This is what I'm thinking. This is what I looked at. I came up with that price because I think that's the most important part is when they can explain why the price is what it is and they can give detailed information on how they came up with it. That's a great sign right there. If you do those things, I think your chances towards success of having a good programmer to be able to develop the program that you want and need, I think that's going to rise dramatically. So I'd highly recommend those things.
Yeah, no, those are great tips. And hiring a developer is not easy for a large project. I've made probably all the mistakes in the book, like honestly, just over the years. But sometimes you have to learn. But hopefully listening to a few of your tips, right, like people won't have to make the same mistakes there as well. And even something as small as creating a little tool that maybe only costs $500 or a couple $100 for something on their website, like those are some tips they can take and hopefully get it done right the first time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So love the tips, love the advice. I've got two questions. I lied. I have two additional questions here. So one is we've laid out all the projects you've got, right? You got Kindle Publishing, you got Publisher Rocket, you got Kindlepreneur, Gun University, you've got a new software tool you're working on, you've got an entire development team. How do you have time to do all of this?
Yeah, that's a while ago, I used to be in kind of the solopreneur mind frame, and it was like, oh, I need to do that, or I need to do that. And that really caused me not to be able to do a lot because I was too in the weeds. So about a year or two ago, I really sat down and I looked at developing systems, SOPs, hiring people for responsibilities and not tasks. I think that was a huge step for me. You have the responsibility for this, you have the responsibility for that. Instead of saying you do this, 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 and this, and report these things to me. When I started doing those things, it really freed me to take more of a strategic stand in the company. And so I would say that was one thing. We currently have 17 people that work for me. So that's really been nice. But again, I think the biggest shift was from the hiring people for tasks to hiring people for responsibility. That was a game changer.
I love that, because that probably allows you kind of the mental space to say, okay, marketing for this product is like so-and-so, right? Like I don't have to think about it. Like they're in charge of marketing or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Prime example of this is 2 years ago, I was still on support for Publisher Rocket.
Yeah.
I was answering support tickets. I was meeting with the programmers every night because my programming team's out of Sri Lanka. So their morning is my night. I was meeting with them every night. I was, hair on fire every time something broke and then trying to figure it out. And oh, by the way, still trying to design new features. And that was just Publisher Rocket. And then I was still writing articles for Kindlepreneur. There's no way that I could step back and make decisions for the company if I am doing support tickets. And so it was really hard because I kept lying to myself saying, I should be like, I figure out what's right and wrong with my software by being in support. Like, how am I going to know if something's broken if somebody else is doing it? So I actually hired a COO, and she did an absolutely phenomenal job. She set up SOPs. We have a support team. She monitors them. We have reporting between each other so that I get a understanding of what I need to know to feel good about what's going on in the company, the financial reports. And she's meeting with the programmers, to discuss the next set of features coming out, and to figure out ways to improve quality as well as stability. I think that was just, it's funny is when you look at it on paper, it sounds like I'm doing a lot more work. Right. I'm working way less now than I was 2 years ago.
It's impressive being able to have the right people in place to be able to sort of hand off those responsibilities, like you said, allows you to think more strategically. So final question here, Dave, is are you reading any good books right now? Do you have any books that you can recommend to our listeners, either that you're reading right now or just any book you've read in the past that you think is a great book?
Well, I'm currently reading Wheel of Time series.
Wheel of Time. Okay. Yeah, I don't know that one.
Apparently it's the longest series ever finished in literary work. It's something like 14 books long, and the author actually died after, I think, book 10. And Brandon Sanderson stepped in to finish the rest of them.
Interesting.
And I decided to read all these because I'm going to be working with Brandon Sanderson in March when we meet up at LA. And he's actually one of my all-time favorite fantasy writers. I think he is the J.R.R. Tolkien of our time. His Stormlight series, A Way of Kings, is probably my hands-down favorite fantasy book. So I figured I would go back to where he really got his kickstart, so I understand some of his writing.
Okay.
I've just been kind of enjoying fiction for a bit, so I don't have any nonfiction recommendations.
That's okay, man. Fiction's good. I need to dip my toe back into fiction every now and again. I've been trying to read a lot of things outside of business lately, but mostly nonfiction, but just a lot of things unrelated to business. I think it's good to kind of see the whole world sometimes a little bit. I think people read a lot of business books, and I still do. Like I still am diving into whatever strategy books, but reading other things is good.
Yeah, I found that listening to fiction books has been phenomenal.
Okay.
Audiobooks, because audiobooks have taken off so much in the industry, and now they're actually becoming more and more like cinematic in a way. The narrators are phenomenal actors that change up their voices based off of who's talking. And so I go for walks. I will work out listening to books. When I'm driving, I'm listening to books. So it allows me to kind of free my mind a bit and give it a rest. So I've really enjoyed that. You can actually do audiobooks from your library. So during this whole Corona thing, it's actually been phenomenal because I've just been crushing out a whole bunch of books and kind of escaping, which is nice. For nonfiction, though, I need to read. I need to have it open.
Yeah.
I need to take notes. I need to stop and think about it. So I read nonfiction, but oh man, I crush through listening fiction. And by the way, too, more and more famous actors are narrating now. Like Nathan Fillion is now narrating a bunch of books because a lot of actors in Hollywood, there are no movies going on, so
that's right. Got a side gig themselves.
Yeah. So there's a lot of really cool stuff out there.
That's awesome. Thank you for the book recommendations. I may check out that series as well. But thank you, Dave, for coming on the Niche Pursuits podcast, sharing what is working well with your business. And as we talked about, if people are interested in checking out Publisher Rocket, they can go over to nichepursuits.com/Publisher Rocket, and they can get access to that free training course that you talked about as well. Is there any other place that you'd like people to go, or I guess what is the best place for people to go to either follow along with you or get in touch with you?
Yeah, if you go to kindleplanner.com, I've got a contact page there. If there's any question you have about anything we talked about or so, just hit me up on that, and I still answer all those. So
awesome. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate your time.